Discover expert insights on personal injury law with David Rosenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm in conversation with personal injury lawyer David Rosenthal. His firm, Rosenthal Law, has offices in both Sacramento and Roseville, California. Thanks for joining us, David.
Nancy, thank you for having me.
David, share with us a little bit more about your practice and how long you've been practicing law.
My practice is exclusively personal injury, so we don't do any divorces or wills or anything like that. So I've been representing people who have been injured in different types of accidents and events since approximately 1995.
What advice would you give someone injured in an accident that is unsure about whether or not they actually need legal representation?
I think it's important in every situation where you've been in an accident to talk to a lawyer. Typically consultations are free. So you want to talk to somebody that is going to be able to give you feedback on your situation. And, I do find that in most cases where people are injured, and the more injured they are, the more significant the injuries, the more necessary it is to have an attorney. But at a minimum, what you should do is contact somebody that will talk to you. I hate to say it, but there are some lawyers that don't want to give you a lot of feedback when they provide a free consultation. But you want to get somebody that's willing to talk to you and find out about your case, find out the details, and give you detailed feedback about whether you need legal representation. And like I said, I think that's most of the time.
Is there an urgency? Is there a timeline?
There is a legal deadline. The statute of limitations for most cases in California, if you're injured in an accident and you're suing a private individual or making a claim against a private individual, the statute of limitations is typically 2 years. Okay, so there can be shorter statute of limitations, and the biggest one that comes to my mind is a public entity is involved in the incident. So let's just say you got rear-ended by a school bus. Okay, the school is operated by a school district that is considered a public entity in California, and there's a shorter statute of limitations of 6 months. So the statute of limitations is something to think about, but more importantly, when there's been an accident, there's been an event, you want to gather all of the evidence, the information that may be relevant to that situation. So, for instance, in an auto accident, there may be some video feeds that are available that you can get if you move quickly. But if you don't move quickly, those can be taped over, those can be lost, and so you can lose that evidence. It's very important that you do investigate every accident as soon as possible.
You had mentioned when we were speaking earlier that there's actually information in the vehicle's black box that could be very useful.
That's true. So anytime, most vehicles that have been manufactured in the 2000s do have a black box that will provide information as to speeds and actually give us a history that we can download. Have somebody go to the vehicle, plug in, and download that information. That can be critical to establishing that from our perspective, that you were not going too fast. Or alternatively, if we're trying to figure out what the other vehicle's contribution to an accident is, we want to download their information. I have had cases where that black box information was critical in establishing that the other party was going way too fast, way over the speed limit, and so they were at fault for causing the collision.
What are some of the complexities of dealing with a personal injury claim that people may not be aware of?
One thing, so even in the most simple case, the simplest case where you've got an accident that's somebody else's fault, the insurance company acknowledges, hey, we've got to pay for, we're going to have to pay damages. One of the biggest things that people don't really understand is that there are rights that potentially the hospital has, an ambulance has, or even your health insurance company has to have some of that money for you to pay some of the money that you receive from the insurance company back to either the hospital directly, the ambulance directly, or the health insurance company. And so if you don't appreciate that, you don't understand that, and you don't understand the rules that relate to how much they should be paid, when they are entitled to payment, you can get into some trouble. The biggest thing we see, for instance, is Medicare. Medicare has a statutory right of reimbursement from a settlement when you receive a settlement. Medi-Cal, that's our state's Medicaid, also has a statutory right of reimbursement from any settlement for medical expenses that they paid. And if you don't take the proper steps to notify them, you have a legal obligation to notify them that you've got a case that's pending. And if you don't take the steps to notify them, and if you don't take steps to make sure that they're compensated when the case settles, then you could have a situation where later on they're coming back to you and they're asking for that money back. And so that's one thing that people don't often think about. And why would they? They've never had this situation come up before.
Have you had situations where you've had clients who initially were like, yeah, no, it wasn't a bit. It was just a fender bender. You know, my neck hurts a little bit, but I'm okay. And then down the road, something changes.
Absolutely. Let's just take the case, the scenario you're just talking about. Say you're in a relatively minor accident. Okay, you're not carted away in an ambulance even. Okay, you're just, you get hit from behind. You know, maybe there's some damage to the rear of your vehicle, some damage to the other vehicle. And yeah, you're a little bit sore even at the scene. You start to feel a little bit of tightness. But you're like, hey, you know, I've had this before. It's probably just a little soreness. It's going to go away. And then over time, it doesn't go away. Over time, it maybe even, as you said, can get a little bit worse. And, you know, sometimes there are, you can injure a disc in an accident, and the symptoms are probably going to start out mild, but they're going to increase over time. They're maybe going to cause some nerve pain. So, for instance, if you have a disc injury in your neck, you got your spinal cord in your neck, you've got nerves in the neck, and over time those can present themselves in pain down the side of the neck, into the trapezius, into the shoulder, into the arm, all the way down the hand, the fingers. And again, a lot of times you think, well, that stuff's going to go away. But we see a lot of clients that over time those symptoms don't go away. And in fact, they end up getting a lot of treatment that they didn't anticipate in the beginning.
And they're entitled to have some sort of compensation generally then.
Well, absolutely. So the compensation that you're entitled to, someone else injures you, there was negligence involved, either in the way they operated their vehicle or in some other way there was negligence, there was fault on the part of another individual, and it's caused you physical injury. So the damages that you're entitled to recover are medical expenses, past and future, loss of income, past and future, and pain and suffering, past and future. And the real critical thing about that is past and future. So somebody gets injured, let's take that last scenario, someone gets injured in an accident. Maybe they have an injury to a disc in their neck, they're having some nerve pain. They go through some physical therapy. The physical therapy may help, or in some situations it doesn't really help. Then the doctors are typically going to go to the next step. Well, we've had some type of conservative treatment, physical therapy, chiropractic, whatever the case may be. We haven't had adequate improvement. We need to investigate. We're going to do an MRI. So they do an MRI, which will show what the structures of the spine are and if there's been an injury in the spine that may be causing the neck pain and the nerve pain. At that point, there's other options. It may be that, well, physical therapy by itself is not going to alleviate the problem. We can try different pain medications. We can try injections, epidural steroid injections, facet injections. That's a joint in your spine that's often injured in an accident. And we can try these different things to see if they provide adequate relief. If those things don't provide adequate relief, then you have the next level of potential treatment, which could include surgery. These things all cost money. All of that treatment costs money. But say you're, year and a half after the accident, and you've gone through these treatments, and you're still having this residual problem. You've still got pain. We can maybe help it a little bit with the injections. We can maybe help it a little bit with the medications, but overall, it's not going away. It's just something that's really bothersome. It's interfering with quality of life on a day-to-day basis. The doctor says, well, you can manage your pain for now with the therapy, with the injections, with the medications. That's going to let you get by. It's going to give you periods of relief where you feel better, but eventually you're going to require a surgery to correct this problem, to have a more permanent solution. Well, that would be a future medical expense, and that can be, a substantial future medical expense. And at that point in time, we probably know that you may have missed, a week, a month, who knows, in terms of what your past loss of income, the time you missed from work. We know what that is up until that point in time. But they say, well, gee, you're going to need to be off work for this surgery. You're going to be out, at least 2 to 3 months. So you've got your past damages and you got your future damages. And the same with pain and suffering. You can tell us, hey, this is what I've been through since the day of this accident when I got this injury, and I tried to go to the doctors and I tried to get better, and I've been through all these types of treatments, some pretty invasive treatments, including the injections. I don't want to have injections, but I've had to have these injections just to try to cope. I've had to go to the doctor over and over and over again to try to cope. So, and it's interfered with my home life. It's interfered with my, social life, my physical activities. It's interfered with all that kind of stuff. So we know what your pain and suffering may be up until that point in time. But you're going to have, this is not done when we settle your case. You continue to have these pain and suffering. You're going to still have these symptoms the day after you settle and into the future. So we need doctors to tell us, well, how long do we expect that to last? And, and if she's, so she's going to have pain and suffering that continues off into the future and then she's going to have a surgery. And then even after the surgery, there's recovery from that. And, and there may be, it may be a situation where you're going to have at least some residual problem for the rest of your life. So we need to know, we need to have a clear medical picture of both the past and the future in order to estimate the total damages that you're entitled to recover from something like this.
Now, let's talk about another area, which is insurance companies. So what are some of the misconceptions people might have about insurance companies and their role when you have an accident and feel like they're going to help you all the way?
When I first started practicing, the insurance industry was completely different. For instance, they had insurance adjusters that made a full career of being insurance adjusters, and they were with an insurance company their whole lives. And at that time, there was kind of almost a personal type of approach to adjusting claims and trying to, and you would have certain adjusters that would be fair and would take care of you and make sure that you got paid, even if you didn't have an attorney. But those days have disappeared and they're long gone. Now insurance companies are manned largely by adjusters who they probably haven't had their job for very long. They probably only done this work for, they have a high turnover rate. So they constantly have people that are coming in, going out, and the people at the low levels that you're dealing with as an individual when you're in an accident, A, they don't really know what they're doing. B, they're following specific protocols that are put, they're coming from the top. They're in a book somewhere that they've read that, when they got the job, here's what you do. And all of these policies are designed really to minimize the amount the insurance company pays out on claims. Okay. So you can't really expect an insurance company to take care of you or to even, on the contrary, they're not trying to pay you what's fair. They're trying to pay you something that will minimize the amount they have to pay out. And overall, that's going to maximize their profits. And, unfortunately, we have a lot of people come to us after they've dealt with the insurance company and they do realize, well, I'm not going to get a fair shake from these guys without some help. So, and
there are times I'm sure where the sum might actually seem reasonable to somebody who doesn't know what the true costs are.
True. If you don't really appreciate the value of your case because you don't know the intricacies, I've dealt with pretty much every single injury that you can imagine. So, having that experience, what the complications are down the road. And you know how to document, medically speaking, what those complications are going to be. But if if this is the first time you're dealing with an injury, you're not necessarily going to have that medical knowledge. I get people all the time that come to me and they said, hey, we're not the kind of people that sue. Yeah, I get that. They have an idea in their head. Certain people are the ones that sue, that try to get damages. I wasn't going to sue, but they're not really. It doesn't seem right what they're trying to pay me for my injury, and the fact is that's most of the people I represent. I mean, there are people that, hey, we're not sue happy people. We're not litigious, but they're not trying to be fair. They're not being right. So when it happens to you, you kind of understand. Hey, I this has affected me, and this has some value, and they're not paying me. It doesn't seem right what they're trying to pay me for what I've been through. And that happens over and over again. I think most of the time they do appreciate that they're not really getting fair value for but you're right that sometimes the offers are, if you have a very serious injury case, I've seen it many, many times over the years where the amount of money seems like a lot. Gee, here's a $100,000 offer. And they, seems like a lot of money to most people, right? But they come and they talk to me and they say, well, Dave, what do you think? You think 100,000? I'm like, gosh, that's not even close. The value of your claim is 10 times that, 5 times that. So I think you're right that does happen, where even in situations where they're offering a substantial amount, it's still not what's fair for the facts of the case.
When it comes to people or the person who is at fault with the accident, a lot of times they have little or no insurance, and the person who's been injured is like, well, there's no point. What can you do for me if they don't have that? But you're saying don't give up.
What I'm saying is that it's very important to have a lawyer look at the case. So I've had many cases, for instance, where the client comes to us, they say, hey, the police report says that there's no insurance. Later on, we find out, well, even though the police didn't find that there was insurance, it turns out that there was insurance. Or, sometimes the driver he's driving somebody else's vehicle, and the driver himself doesn't have insurance. So the police report says, well, I had no insurance. Well, it turns out the vehicle's owned by somebody else who did have insurance. Okay. So that's, there needs to be some follow up, and, the average person's not going to know to follow up on that. They're told that there's no insurance, and that's the end of the story. There may be other scenarios where, an accident happens between 2 vehicles, or maybe there's more than one vehicle involved, and one vehicle doesn't have insurance, but the other vehicle is involved has insurance. It turns out that they are partially responsible for causing the collision. So there's different nuances to that. Now, in a situation where truly there is no insurance on the person that caused the accident, or more often there's some insurance, but it's not adequate to compensate the individual for the extent of the injury, the damages that they've sustained. So those 2 scenarios, there is what we in California uninsured motorist. So if you have in your insurance policy, let's say the person's completely uninsured, but you have in your insurance policy a provision for uninsured motorists, that will cover you for your damages up to the amount of the coverage that you have for the injury that the other person caused. If you have uninsured motorists, say you have uninsured motorists of $100,000, the other person that's in the accident, that caused the accident, has insurance coverage for the minimum allowed by law. Up until recently, that was $15,000 per person, which is not very much. If you're having a serious injury, that's essentially nothing. But say they have $15,000 in liability insurance. The insurance company says, oh, here, take it. We're not going to fight you. You do have additional coverage under your uninsured motorist coverage for the difference between that policy of 15 and how much your coverage is. So up to an additional $85,000 in that situation where there's a $100,000 uninsured motorist, you can get up to an additional $85,000 in underinsured coverage. So that's another possibility. We have had some scenarios where this is true in serious injury cases. We've got somebody that's very seriously injured. They've got big damages, big medical expenses, big loss of income, big pain and suffering. The person is underinsured, but they have assets. Okay, so they're underinsured because they didn't buy enough insurance for their station in life. In other words, maybe they have got houses, maybe they've got lands and businesses or assets that they should be protecting, that they should have taken into account when they purchased their insurance, but they just, for whatever reason, they decided to take an insurance amount that's not adequate to protect them. So in that situation, we have actually, in some situations, negotiated personal contributions from these people that have inadequate liability insurance, but they have assets that would allow them to pay an additional amount to compensate somebody that's had a very bad accident, injury.
From your experience, what is the biggest mistake that people who are injured make after an accident and perhaps not approaching yourself or another personal injury lawyer?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I think that's the big mistake. Is the biggest mistake you can make is to assume, we've kind of covered it. Assume the insurance company is going to take care of you, not talk to an expert, somebody that handles these cases, who's handled these cases for a long time, has extensive experience, and knows what, pretty much every possible scenario that could come up, and can evaluate your case for you. Again, the consultations are free. You might as well take advantage of that. Talk to somebody before you decide what to do, before you decide I'm going to retain an attorney or I'm not going to retain an attorney. And, a lot of times you can get some personal advice that's just going to help educate you about your rights. And that's going to, at a minimum, and that's going to help you make a decision going forward about what the best path for you is. You
had mentioned, too, that sometimes in cases, they may not even need to pay for your services up front. Correct.
So the way that most personal injury attorneys work is on a contingency fee. So what that means is, let's just say we talk on the phone. I say, look, you've got a case here. I think you're going to benefit greatly from having my services. They say, okay, well, let's go ahead and do this. There's no money. You don't have to pay us any money up front. There's no cost. We simply sign a contract that says that in the event that there is a recovery. So in the event there is a recovery. So if there's no recovery, there's no fee. But in the event that there is a recovery, then our fee is a percentage of that recovery. Pretty standard fee for any good personal injury attorney is 33%. If you're trying to get a discount on fees, I'd be leery of that. There are, pretty much any good personal injury attorney is gonna have that as a standard fee. That's only if there is a recovery. So in the meantime, you don't have to pay any money up front. If for some reason, something happens and the case is not successful, then you don't owe the attorney anything.
Important information to know. Thank you so much, David.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nancy.
David Rosenthal is a personal injury lawyer. His firm is Rosenthal Law, with law offices located in both Sacramento and Roseville, California.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.